representative with a different attitude if Kamala Harris is president than we do under Joe Biden and would under Donald Trump with respect to the freedom of the Palestinian people?
I'm not sure that the election in the U.S. will make much of a difference per se, but I do think the American deep state has to take note that what is happening in Israel and in the Middle East is adverse to U.S. interests and to global peace. This is not shaping up the way the American deep state wants or expects. Israel itself is far more vulnerable. The United States is far more isolated. American public opinion, which somehow has to be managed through the standard narratives and pablum and lies and so forth, has to be addressed because it is turning strongly against U.S. government policy. So I'm not talking about a particular election result. I'm talking about a change of U.S. longstanding policy because it doesn't work. Eventually, the U.S. changes bad policies. Of course, there's the famous quotation of Winston Churchill that the U.S. always does the right thing after it's tried everything else. And it may be the case in this long-standing conflict, which after all is now 57 years since the 1967 war.
Can we comfortably and with intellectual honesty conclude that Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government were never serious about negotiating for a ceasefire for the return of the hostages from the fact that they assassinated the principal Hamas negotiator?
Well, I think that there's a deeper point, which is that that Netanyahu has never given a moment's honest consideration to a state of Palestine. This is the core of his political party, the Likud. It's pretty deep in Israeli politics, period. Israeli politics has become more and more extreme over the years, so it's become more and more true. Now, if you start from the premise that there is going to be no acceptable political solution, that the only solution on offer by Israel is apartheid at the least, ethnic cleansing or genocide in an escalating fashion, then issues like ceasefires become basically impossible because everything is done with the context of where is this heading. Hezbollah or Hamas or others aren't interested in a ceasefire in which they, give the returning hostages just to have Israel resume its genocidal attacks a week or two or a month later. And so everything has the long-term cast over it. And the fundamental problem is that the Israeli government, in the most basic and blatant and absolutely unambiguous way, is opposed to anything other than continued Israeli apartheid rule or ethnic cleansing or genocide. And we have people who are so shocking in what they say, like the finance minister, Ben-Gvir, or Smotrich, Smotrich, who together with the interior minister, Ben-Gvir, makes statements that are blatantly calling for genocide, saying it's okay to starve to death 2 million people if they won't return the hostages. And returning the hostages is in a political context in which they say, well, Israel, of course, is going to continue to dominate the Palestinian people. So the core point, Judge, in all of this is that there has been no political perspective or solution on the horizon for one glimmer of a moment. And that's because at the core of Netanyahu's politics and this government's politics, there's a complete rejection, utter and total and unambiguous and unmovable, of Palestinian political rights. Given that, what else is going to occur except continued violence and war? And the United States is a party to all of this. And either Blinken and Sullivan, and God knows if Biden is still alert to any of this, who knows, but they don't acknowledge this basic truth for one moment. And that's what's so sad and pathetic about American policy. You can't negotiate ceasefires and temporary solutions if there's no political prospect in sight.
But Netanyahu does not preside over a liberal democracy, presides over an authoritarian theocracy. And you can't really reason with people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. They favor torture. They favor horrific torture. They favor immunity for the horrific tortures. They favor jailbreaks when their people are arrested and prosecuted. They favor bullets in the head on the theory that they need to have more beds in the jails. I mean,
and
reason with
a lot of Israeli society at this point, traumatized, propagandized, followers of extremist beliefs, whatever the various reasons, agrees with this. They don't like Netanyahu as an individual. They don't trust him because he is a crook and fundamentally dishonest. But they don't oppose the ruthlessness of this extremist government. And that's widespread, at least according to the opinion surveys in Israel. This is a complete tragedy and a devastation of a breakdown of the most basic standards in society. Now, what do you do in this context? Of course, you have to impose a solution. First, to protect the Palestinian people, period. Second, because Israel will come to its senses at some time in the future, but not now. It doesn't demonstrate any sense in this. And it's not only Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and the other extremists, though they are the perpetrators, but it is broader Israeli society right now, which is traumatized. It's been propagandized relentlessly. It does not see the context or care about the context. It's been told that this is the Holocaust revisited, or it's been told that this is God's redemptive plan because a lot of the images are biblical from 2,600 years ago. It's such a mess. But this is something that the world community can stop and needs to stop and needs to say, okay, we know what the solution is because there's only one that is on the table, that is on offer, that is possible, practicable, and in line with decades of international law. That is two states living side by side with a wall between them, with peacekeepers between them. They can hate each other, but it's two states living side by side on the June 4th, 1967 borders, with Palestine's capital in East Jerusalem and Palestinian control over the Islamic holy sites. This is the story, and it can be imposed tomorrow by the UN Security Council.
I want to play a short